Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is Thanksgiving Day, November 28th. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Taking a look at the infrared satellite imagery. We got BC, Washington, Oregon off to the right. You can see we got some clouds and some precipitation streaming into central and northern British Columbia. This system is largely going to miss Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana, but it is associated with some Arctic air that is up here. You can kind of see on the infrared satellite imagery, this air up here, these are not cloud tops. That is the surface. So you can see the colder air locked up to the latitudes of the north, pretty typical this time of year. But yes, there is some Arctic air associated with this, but it will be moving across, British Columbia, Alberta, and then down into some of the lower 48 east of the Rocky Mountains. But we'll take a look at what is to come through the extended forecast as well. And we'll take a look at what's coming here the next few days also. Now, if we look at the visible satellite imagery, you can see as the sun rises, we've got some clouds, some pretty extensive fog across the Willamette Valley into the Puget Sound, pretty foggy at my house as well. And you can see there is some fog across eastern Washington as well. Moving back and forth, you can see some high clouds streaming across. High clouds usually trap the heat, but you can see the coverage is not that much. It'll trap the heat a bit more, and it can somewhat hinder fog development, but it's not thick enough right now to completely remove all this fog across some of the region. You can see Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens out here on the GOES 18 satellite imagery this morning. Looking at storm reports across the region, not much going on, so not much to speak of there. Moving along, you'll see Spokane with some freezing fog advisories out here. It does include Yakima, Connell, Pasco, Walla Walla, and then they've got the temperature forecast here for the day today. Now, looking at the dense fog here across some of the Willamette Valley, you can see some of the webcams that the National Weather Service showed us this morning. It should be no surprise if you take a look outside. Some pretty dense fog out there. This goes through 11 a.m. today, and it may take some areas even longer than that to break out. Puget Sound, something similar as well. You can see the dense fog advisory that is in place, and this may be a reoccurring theme as we go through the next few days. Now, looking at the European, this is 100-meter wind speed, and what I've been checking out here is that we really don't get much wind into the area over the next few days. Here we go on in through Saturday morning now. You can see we haven't picked up any stronger winds across the region, so we may be in for a foggy regime here over the next few days. And yeah, so that should be kind of interesting. I'm going to show you the North American model, high resolution. This is visibility. So it's not really doing too well this morning. As you saw, there's much more fog. This was showing here on the North American model. And then watch what happens as we go on in through Friday morning. And you can see it looks to be even more extensive on the North American model here as well. And you can see pockets of fog across eastern Washington, Oregon, probably in the valleys of some of British Columbia and some of the Idaho Panhandle as well. And then we go through Saturday morning, and again with that dense fog, will be in position here. So that's a travel hazard potentially on the morning hours. Take your time out there and potentially travel during the afternoon hours if you can avoid it. And now taking a look at that system sliding by to our north. So you'll see this low pressure right there moving in through central BC. And you can see the pressure gradients here, mainly on the east portion of the Rockies there across northern British Columbia. Some snow involved with that, especially across western BC, mainly north of Vancouver Island, across the higher terrain. Pretty good rounds of snowfall coming in here as we go through the next few days. We're all the way on through Sunday night, and then another round probably coming after that. But that system is definitely going to be a bit warmer. But yeah, that Arctic air is going to stay north and east of the area here. The Rocky Mountains provide a nice terrain feature that keeps a lot of that Arctic air from easily extending a bit further south into our area. Now, looking at 6-hour snow, just going to play this through to give you some confidence here that, maybe a bit of light snow for some of northern Montana here as we go on in through Friday morning. And maybe a snow shower across British Columbia. Northern Washington, but definitely the bigger amounts up across north of Vancouver Island. I'm toggling back and forth here on the day Friday. So again, you can see that precipitation slide off to the east as we go through Saturday and eventually Sunday morning shown there. And then the Arctic air gets out of here. Now, this kind of shows you the high pressure here across northern portions. And again, there's that Arctic air. I kind of just do like to show this. You can see the pressure falls in front of that Arctic air, and there's that weak system sliding down. And again, you can see the Arctic air stays bottled up east of the Rockies. So now taking a look at 925 millibar temperature, it's about 2,500 feet in the atmosphere. And you can see how cold it is, again, to the north of that terrain here. And you can see the Pacific Northwest. We are protected from a lot of that cooler air from getting down into the region. And you kind of see that stay east of the Rockies. Now watch what happens as we go on in through at some point on the day Monday. You see things warm up there. It's kind of an interesting meteorological feature known as the Chinook winds. As you start to get these westerlies, they compress down the backside of the Rockies, and you can see that warm air spread across Alberta there. So just kind of an interesting feature that I like to point out from time to time there. And if I take a look at the winds at about 900 millibars, a little bit higher in the atmosphere, but if we go out in the same time period, you'll see the winds kick up right there across the Rockies, and that's that downsloping Chinook wind that can warm things up. And you can really be a snow eater after recent snowfalls when you turn those winds westerly and bring those compression winds down the terrain. Now, back to the extended forecast here for the Pacific Northwest. So this is what's known as Pacific North American positive. You can see we've got the storm track out over the Gulf of Alaska and the Pacific Ocean. That means southwesterly flow and potentially storms moving up the coastline like this. The rotation here around the trough is counterclockwise and it brings it up out of the south and the southwest. And this is negative when we bring that trough closer, and this is the high pressure out here rotating like that. Clockwise rotation, northwest winds, troughing here closer to the west coast of North America, maybe some chillier air. This is Pacific North American negative. So here is the forecast. You can see the GFS starts to ramp things up and brings that Gulf of Alaska back to life here as we go through the first week of December. And then you can see the transition, maybe just some negative as we bring, that troughing a bit closer here. So we may start to bring some more active weather as we go through December 7th, 8th, according to the GFS. The European is something similar, but it does show the positive and then eventually turning to negative here as we go through December 12th or 13th. So just something fun to look at there as far as the Pacific North American oscillation. So if we take a look at 500 millibar heights, this is the European as of last night. You see the ridge building here, so we may be in for some foggy weather for a few days, and then we'll watch this troughing out over the Pacific Ocean to see just how close it is going to get. This model only goes out towards December 3rd, the nighttime there, 144 hours, but we'll take a look at some extended forecasts here in a moment. But now look at this 15-day precipitation anomaly for the European artificial intelligence across Pacific Northwest all the way down through California. This is a huge deficit here, folks. And if I scroll down a little bit here, you see we're pegging the scale in some instances. You can see above average for British Columbia. But on the flip side of that, in this time frame, things can change, and we could start to drop this precipitation a bit closer down to the Pacific Northwest in upcoming models. So you kind of take that with a grain of salt, but that's a pretty stark signal for below normal precipitation as we go on in through the 2-week time period up towards December 12th. And same thing is showing up for the GFS also, the 16-day precipitation anomaly, but a sharp cutoff there right near Vancouver Island. So we will be watching the storm track to see if it will trend a bit further off to the south and east. And I believe, okay, so this is southeast Idaho. I don't know why this is in here, but yeah, no impacts, weather impacts, and we'll just drive home that point there. So good to see it, and we'll update this one as well. Pendleton, Oregon. We do have a freezing fog advisory through 10 a.m. Thursday, so watch out for that, and this could be an ongoing theme, again, like I mentioned, over the next few days. Now, let's take a look here at the artificial intelligence 500 millibars. So I'm going to put this into motion, and you can see we're dealing with this ridging, the foggy regime here, and then we start to watch for some of these systems here pushing in as we go through the 6th and 7th, and then maybe some additional systems as we go on into the future. We'll have to watch that storm track very closely here because things can change quite dramatically at this time of year. And the GFS, let's do this one hot off the presses, the 12Z run here. So I've not looked at the 12Z yet. You can see that system associated with that Arctic air further areas of the north tries to bring maybe a little bit of snow down across some of the Cascades of BC and Washington as we go on into Friday night and Saturday morning. That system continues. The Arctic air will push off to the east, and we're going to be in this foggy regime. And we start to bring the storm track up into southeast Alaska. It tries to dip down towards Vancouver Island, but man, look at this. We're scrolling 150 hours out in big totals for some of western BC, maybe southeast Alaska, but not really getting down into Washington and Oregon much at all in this in this model run here. This is pretty wild, as we're just going to be immune to some of these storms according to the 12Z GFS model coming up. But again, this can change pretty quickly here, but that is not a good sight for precipitation totals here over the next couple of weeks. And the 6 to 10 day, let me update this. Look at this above average signal for precipitation as we go through the first week of December. And if we go to the 6 to 10 day, now this is interesting here because some of the previous runs were showing the precipitation moving back up into the region more during this time period. So this is probably going to be flipping and flopping back and forth. 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook from the Climate Prediction Center has this, but as you saw, the most recent GFS and the European didn't have much during this time frame as well. So we might see a flip back and forth on that. Here's the 8 to 14 day. This goes through the 11th above average. And if we take a look at 8 to 14 day here, kind of a mixed bag across Pacific Northwest, but again, take that with a grain of salt. So anyway, hope you guys are enjoying your food today. I'm going to get out there and do a few things before I get to settle down and watch some football and eat as well. So yeah, we'll break everything down again tomorrow. Let me know what you're seeing out there in the comments below. If you saw any freezing fog east of the mountains, I'd be kind of interested in hearing about that. But yeah, anyway, we'll continue to watch what's coming next. Hope you guys are having a good day, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.